Hello, I'm Jamila Musayeva, an international etiquette consultant, author of etiquette books and pre-recorded online etiquette courses. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Royal Ascot, in particular, how it originated, what it is, and what is the cultural etiquette and the dress codes of this beautiful event. So for those of you that haven't heard about Royal Ascot, it's basically the most prestigious horse racing event in the world that happens every year in UK. It's the event that I have always wanted to attend. It was on my dream wish list. It's an event that combines all the things that I love. So horse racing, horses, culture, etiquette, dress codes, tradition. And to be able to witness that in person was such a dream come true for me, and I wanted to share with you all the things that I've learned about Royal Ascot, both that I've learned through research but also through my personal experience. So Royal Ascot is a quintessential symbol of British tradition, elegance, society. When you are first witnessing this event, it might feel a bit overwhelming if you're not very familiar with the British traditions and culture and etiquette, but if you want to learn it from experience, this is the place to be. Royal Ascot actually originated in the early 18th century by Queen Anne, who was an avid equestrian, and she found this beautiful vast land not too far from Windsor Castle, and she thought about, oh, this is going to be a great place to have horse racing event. So it was her discovery of this land that led to this beautiful tradition to be born. The idea of Royal Ascot was founded, so to speak, by Queen Anne, but it was really King George IV and Queen Victoria who took this tradition to a completely different level and made it more glamorous, more prestigious. Today, King Charles III and Queen Camilla, they graced every day's race with a royal procession, and I got a chance to witness that. The Royal Ascot takes place in Ascot Racecourse in Berkshire, England, which is about 6 miles away from Windsor Castle and 25 miles away from London. It took me about maybe 2 hours by car to get from London to Ascot Racecourse, but it was during the traffic hour, so it might be a little bit less when there's no traffic. But if you are planning your trip, make sure that you take about 2 hours to about 2 hours and 10 minutes to be sure that you arrive on time. So the Royal Ascot is a 5-day event. It starts on Tuesday and it ends on Saturday and happens mid-June, sometime in June. There's no specific date so that every year it happens on the same date. It moves around in June, but it always starts on Tuesday and ends on Saturday. It's a very eventful week and there are a lot of races happening. Every day there are 7 races, and so in total there are 35 races. It's not a cumulative win, so there isn't like at the end all the winners they are competing against each other and there's essentially one winner at the end. Every race has its own winner, which I thought was amazing because it gives every racer a chance to win within that one race. One of the most prized wins is called Gold Cup win, and that happens actually on Ladies' Day, which is on Thursday. So the beginning is Tuesday. We have Tuesday, it starts with Queen Anne Stakes, and then we have Wednesday, and then every Thursday of Royal Ascot is called Ladies' Day. It doesn't mean it's only for ladies, it just means that it's a day when people dress up the most, fashionistas show up, more photographers are there to take pictures. It's the most fashionable day of the race, and it's the day when the Gold Cup race happens, which happens to be the highlight race of the week. So now let's talk a little bit about the schedule for Royal Ascot. The doors usually open around 10:30 a.m. That's what was written on the schedule, but it doesn't mean you have to be there at 10:30. It's just when it's going to be less crowded, you can roam around, take a look at the whole Ascot Racecourse, depending on where you're seated or where you enter. And then the actual event, the Royal Ascot, usually starts after the royal procession, which happens at 2 p.m. sharp. So at 2 p.m. you have the royal procession where the members of the royal family enter the Ascot Racecourse in horse-drawn carriages. It's very beautiful to observe. So they usually enter from the Windsor Great Park, and as they are proceeding, they basically the public gets to see them. If the public is seated in Queen Anne or Royal Enclosure, you get a view of the procession, and then once they enter, it's a time for the races to start, and then you have races up about, I think the last one was around 6:30, 7 p.m.ish, the last race, and so there are a total of 7 races, and there's about 30-minute break between each race, so you can go get drink, you can walk around, you can eat, or you can just sit and watch people, which was what I was doing because it was such a beautiful scenery around that I couldn't take my eyes off of people and their fashion choices and just overall behavior at this beautiful event. So now let's talk about how do you get to Royal Ascot, what are your options, and basically for whoever is not familiar with Royal Ascot and how it's structured, there are 4 different tiers or enclosures that vary based on their pricing, exclusivity, and dress codes. So I'm going to name all of them and then going to talk about each and every one of them. So the highest, most premium one where you cannot get tickets, it's only invitation basis. That means someone as a member of the Royal Enclosure has to invite you and you need to be approved in order to attend. That is called Royal Enclosure. Then the 3 other options are basically going to be from top to down, and those are the places where you can get tickets from on their website. The premium ticketed tier is Queen Anne. So here you can get tickets. In the Queen Anne, you basically are closest to Royal Enclosure. They're side by side. You get to see the parade ring as you do with Royal Enclosure, and parade ring is where you get to see the horses before they go to race and after they win. In Queen Anne, there's also a more stricter dress code than the lesser 2 or lower 2, so to speak. Then next you have the Village Enclosure, which is also a ticketed tier. This one is a bit more fashionable, more party vibes, it's more cool. There are lounges and bars and more fashionistas and younger crowd opts to be in the Village Enclosure. Then you have the least expensive option, that's called Windsor Enclosure. That is where you get to buy the tickets. You don't get to have a view of a parade ring. You also don't get to see it in a Village Enclosure either. And here the dress code is, there's pretty much no dress code and no hats required. I'm going to talk about more detail now about every tier, but essentially that is the breakdown of tiers. So let's start with the lowest, and that is Windsor Enclosure. There is no formal dress code required here, no hats or fascinators. So if you see people not really dressed up as you could imagine yourself in a formal attire, that means most likely these people are going to Windsor Enclosure. They don't get to see the parade ring. There are a bit more people there, and so it's a bit more crowded, and usually just people that want to be more casual, less formal, opt to go to Windsor Enclosure. The next higher is, as I mentioned already, it is the Village Enclosure. This is if you are young and you want to see more fashion and you want to, get to parties, hear live music. Once the race is over, they have live music. There are lounges and bars, and you get to, meet young crowd. Then this is your place to be. I would say this is probably the most fun and a bit less formal enclosure. Here, you might want to wear a fascinator or a headpiece. It's more formal, so to speak, than Windsor Enclosure. With the Queen Anne, you already have a more strict, slightly more stricter dress code. Men should wear a suit, a tie. There are no bow ties, no cravats, formal shoes. For women, they can wear pretty much anything like a suit with a pantsuit, any kind of a dress that they fancy. There are no particular restrictions about the dress, and also they can wear either hat or fascinator. It's not strictly that there should be a certain criteria for a hat, which is not the case for the Royal Enclosure. So as you see, as we move up the tier, the dress code becomes more and more formal. And at Queen's Anne, you get to see the parade ring, which is where the horses appear before the race and after, as I already mentioned. So you get to have a very beautiful view of the race, and this is the closest that you're going to be entering, basically that you're going to be closest to the Royal Enclosure. So as you walk in to the Ascot racecourse, there's going to be 2 entrances, one for Queen Anne and one for Royal Enclosure, and you basically walk into the same space and then you split into 2 different entrances. But with Windsor and Village, they have different entrances, which is usually from the main entrance. Now the highest, most premium and non-ticketed tier, invitation only tier, is called Royal Enclosure, and here the dress code is really strict. In fact, when you enter the Royal Enclosure through their entrance gate, there's even a person that monitors the dress code, and if your dress code is not matching the criteria, you might be asked to cover certain parts of your body, or if you didn't come with the appropriate hat, you might be asked to change that. So it's very strict, and it's beautiful. And I mean, I am personally someone who loves abiding by dress codes. I love when people do so too. It shows respect to certain tradition, to certain values, to certain ways of being. And as someone who loves tradition and culture, I really admire that they're still keeping this for centuries, onwards. So for this tier, for men, they have to wear a morning suit, which is basically a black, navy, or gray coat. They have a matching waistcoat and pants. They have to wear formal black shoes and black socks. And for women, the dress should be below the knee. The arms should be covered, so there are no spaghetti straps, no off-shoulder dresses, no midriff open or décolleté open. So it's very important that you're well covered around your chest area, but also below your knees. In terms of the color of the dress, it could be any color, any print, anything that you fancy. As well, for the hat, it has to be a hat that has a base, and so no headpieces that have smaller than 10 centimeters of a base are allowed, and no fascinators are allowed. So you might wear a headpiece, but it has to have a base of 10 centimeters, or preferably, to be on a safer side, you have to wear a hat. And the diversity of hats in their design, color, in their structure was absolutely fascinating. Someone who loves hats and loves collecting hats, this was my heaven to be, because honestly, the amount of creativity that was put into making this hat, I assure you, haven't seen any hat that was repeated. Everything was different, and there was some bought from the mass market, which is what I did, but a lot of women had their hats tailor-made for them, which was extremely beautiful and so intricate in their design. So now let's talk a little bit about my experience, how I happened to be at Royal Ascot and what was my impression of it. So as I said, as someone who loves culture, tradition, etiquette, fashion, British tradition, this was the place for me to be. It was like a dream come true. I've always had Royal Ascot on my wish list for many, many years, but I actually didn't know what was happening during the time that I was in London for my afternoon etiquette workshop at Fortnum and Mason. It just happened to be on the same date, and the tickets and invitations for this event, they go out early in May, and it was very last minute, but a very good friend of mine helped so much by inviting us to Royal Enclosure. I'm so grateful for having this opportunity, and I want to shout out and thank my friend for being able to do that for me and my other friend. So we had invitations to Royal Enclosure. We got to go there actually on Thursday, which happens to be the most fashionable day, or the most interesting day of all, because it's called the Ladies' Day. So on Thursdays of every Royal Ascot, it's always the Ladies' Day. It doesn't mean it's for ladies only, because at first I thought it was just for ladies, but apparently it's called Ladies' Day because it's the day when people dress up the most, there's more fashion there, there's more party there, and so there are a lot of photographers there to take pictures, and I actually got lucky enough to be photographed as well. It was another dream come true. We happened to be at Royal Ascot on Ladies' Day, and also I happened to do my very first ever bets. I never gamble, I've never done any bets. So this was the very first bet in my life, and I had no idea about the horses. Who was their trainer, their history, nothing. I was purely betting based on my intuition. So, and interestingly, the very first bet that I did was on the race called Gold Cup. So on Ladies' Day, there is always one of the most prestigious races, and that is called the Gold Cup race. And it happened to be my very first bet. I had no clue about that. It just happened. All the stars happened to align that day. The horse was called Trollerman, and I remember I went up to do my first bet, and there was this elderly man at the betting, and he asked me, which horse do you want to bet on? And I was like, Twirlerman. And he was like, do you know anything about the horse? And I said I had no clue. And then he was like, why would you bet on that? I said, I don't know, I just liked his shirt. It was a very bright blue shirt on the screen, and I said I just liked his shirt. So I did my bet, but he said, because you don't know, you're not sure, I advise you to bet on each way. So there are different ways of betting. One is basically the most common, I think, is win. So when you know for sure that this horse is going to win, you place all your money on that horse, and only if it comes first, you win something. You get more, but you also risk more. The other less risky option is each way, which means if your horse wins or gets any of the second or third places, basically you get something. It's less risky, you get to win less, but it's a safer way to go. So I said, okay, let's do each way. But I knew in my heart that it's going to win. Anyways, I did each way and it won. So Royal won the Gold Cup, and it happened to be my very first bet, and I got to win something. So I got into this really mood of betting more, and my friend, she told me, maybe you should just stop, no more betting. It's the beginner's luck. You got lucky the very first time, but maybe you should stop. So I sat through another race just watching. There were about 30 horses for that race. I wasn't really sure which I felt like betting on, but I did have one horse in mind, and it apparently in the end won, but I was listening to my friend's advice. So I skipped that race. And then when the next race started, I thought I really want to bet again, because when you bet, there's also more interest in the race itself. You watch it more carefully because you are not only now mentally, but you're financially invested in this race and emotionally. So I did go for the second bet. So I only did 2 bets. And again, I go up to this man and I tell him, I want to put my winning bet. So I want to now bet on the win for this horse, number 14, Trinity College. He asked me, do you know anything about this horse? I said, no, sir, nothing. And he says, why again? I was like, I like the number. So he laughed, I laughed, we exchanged some laughter, and he said, okay. So I bet on number 14. I come back to take a seat. There are 2 gentlemen seated next to me. They're well aware of the horse race. They had their money on another horse. They asked me, okay, why on Trinity College? Do you know anything about the horse? I said, no. And he said, why? And I said, my favorite number. They laughed. And they laughed really hard, and I laughed with them. I laughed at myself. They're like, oh, that's a very female way of betting, you know nothing about it, but just like the number. I was like, yeah, I liked the color before and it won, and here I like the number, so hopefully it will win. So next thing I know is that Trinity College gets the first place. So it's the winner of the race. And the guys who laughed at me before, I was laughing at them now, and they were actually very surprised, and they congratulated me on the win, and they said, wow, it was your lucky day. And honestly, I did feel like it was my lucky day from the very beginning of how I ended up in Royal Enclosure. It was Ladies' Day, and how I did my first 2 bets and I won on both. So I truly felt very lucky that day. I don't know if it's beginner's luck or it was just my very strong intuition that I should trust in most of my decision making, which I don't always do, but life has shown me that whenever I do trust my intuition, I get to win the most. So I did make a small profit on both bets. I actually entered the bet with only £5, so I didn't make a lot, but it was a fun way to, to test myself and try my intuition and really just enjoy the race. So for the betting, actually, the entrance fee is just £2 for toad betting, and you can do win each way. You could do, you could forecast. It's if you can tell the number 1 and 2 in the exact order. You can also trecast, which is if you say 1, 2, and 3 in the exact order. So basically, the more accurate you are in your bet, obviously, the more profits you're going to make. But if you're someone just starting and want to try out a few, you can actually bet on few different horses. You could do each way or win each way on one horse and win on the other horse, so increase your chances of winning. It was surely a very fun experience. Apart from just enjoying the race, I love horseback riding, I love horses, so naturally this event is very interesting to me. But if you're not into horseback riding or horses, if you're into fashion or if you're into culture, if you're into tradition, then this is really the place to be, because you get to see people display and exhibit the culture and the tradition that has been there for many centuries before, and they've kept it. And no matter how much progress they've made in modern day life, this event is very traditional and I adored it. And if you're someone who also values that, then Royal Ascot is for sure one of the experiences that you must have in your life. If you're curious to see more pictures and a full reel dedicated to Royal Ascot experience, you can check out my Instagram. I'll link it here, and you can follow me on Instagram to get more updates on my daily life. Thank you so much for watching this video until the very end, and if you're interested in learning more in depth about etiquette, you can get my etiquette books that are available on my website. They are shippable worldwide, so you can order to wherever you are. And if you're interested in learning even more in depth, you can join my pre-recorded online etiquette courses available on my website. One is called Western Formal Dining Etiquette from A to Z, that prepares you for a formal dining experience and takes you from the moment you exit the car to the time you finish up with the dessert. And the second course is called The Art of Entertaining at Home, which teaches you how to set up a table according to 4 different seasons, what are the rules of setting the table, as well as how to do floral arrangements and how to wrap gifts. And if you're even more curious about etiquette, you can join my Patreon Etiquette Movie Club, where every month I do an analysis of a movie from an etiquette point of view. And so this content is only exclusive for my Patreon club, and you cannot find it anywhere but my Etiquette Movie Club. And by joining my Etiquette Movie Club right now, you can have access to more than 50 etiquette movie reviews. So for those of you that were the most patient, I want to share with you the outfit for today's video. So for this dress that I'm wearing, which is not something I was wearing for the Ascot actually, I opted to wear it for this video. It is a linen dress by a brand called Charwell. I have opted to pair it with flats by Chanel, which I've had for many years. And I have decided to also wear this beautiful hat by a brand called Village Enclosure. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!